The Sunday my son stopped asking if I was okay and started asking if I was alone, I should have hung up the phone. Instead, I lied to him for the first time in my life, and that lie is the only reason I am breathing right now. To understand why I lied, you have to understand the silence I live in. I am 67 years old. I spent 30 years driving a maintenance truck for the state of North Carolina before I hung up my keys for good. My wife, Eleanor, lost her battle with cancer 6 years ago. We bought this ranch house in Asheville back in '98. It isn't much, but she planted those azaleas by the front step, and keeping them alive feels like the only thing I haven't messed up. I am not a social person. I eat the same scrambled eggs at the same time every day. I water the garden. I watch the Braves on a low volume. And every morning, I take my heart medication with a glass of apple juice. That is the rhythm. That has been the rhythm since I retired. My son Matthew is 34. He lives about an hour north, near Winston-Salem. He used to sell software for a logistics startup. He was good at it, or so I believed. After his mother passed, something shifted in him. He started calling more. Not just on birthdays, but random Tuesdays. About 2 years ago, those calls turned into a ritual. Every Sunday at exactly 8 a.m., my phone would light up. He would ask me the same questions, in the same order. Did I take my pill? How did I sleep? Did anyone stop by the house? Is the furnace working? I answered happily. My neighbor Dolores, whose kids live in California, told me I was lucky. My old buddy Walt, who I worked with on the asphalt crew for 20 years, said I raised a good man. I thought grief had just made my son more attentive. I had no reason to think otherwise until last Sunday. Walt had been planning to drive down from Boone since Thanksgiving. He had hip surgery last fall, and this was the first weekend he felt strong enough to make the trip. I told him to take the spare bedroom. We'd grill some burgers, watch the game, talk about the old days before we both got too old to drive at night. He showed up Saturday afternoon. We sat on the back deck until almost midnight, just chewing over the past. Sunday morning, I woke up at 7:30. I made coffee. I was trying to figure out how to tell Walt I needed the house quiet at 8 o'clock for Matt's call, but Walt was still snoring. The house was still. When the phone rang at exactly 8 o'clock, I saw Matt's face on the screen. But before I answered, something weird happened. I hesitated. It wasn't fear. It was just a strange feeling, like noticing a crack in a wall you walk past every day, but never really looked at. Maybe it was having Walt there. Maybe having another person in the house reminded me that I used to be a person who didn't have to report his location to his kid. When did love start feeling like a roll call? I picked up. "Morning, Dad," he said. Warm voice, measured. He asked about the pill. I said yes. He asked about my sleep. I said fine. Then came the third question. "Is anyone there with you?" I don't know why I did it, but I said, "No, it's just me." Quiet morning. There was a pause, a heartbeat. Maybe 2 seconds. Then he said, "Good. Okay, good." The rest of the call was normal. We talked about the azaleas blooming. He said he loved me. I said it back. We hung up. I stood in the kitchen holding my coffee, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I had lied. And he had sounded relieved. Walt came downstairs around 9 o'clock. We ate eggs. About 40 minutes later, Walt put his fork down. He had that look I remember from 30 years of fixing potholes. The look he gets when the foreman is wrong and Walt is about to prove it. "I saw your pill case in the bathroom last night," he said. "The one with the days of the week on it." I told him Eleanor bought that years ago. The Saturday slot is always empty because I take the pill in the morning. Walt shook his head. The Saturday slot still had a pill in it. I felt my stomach drop. I told him maybe I forgot. It happens, but Walt kept staring. He said, "It wasn't your usual pill. Yours are white ovals. This one was round, different size." I didn't say anything. I walked to the bathroom. He was right. A little round white pill sat in the Saturday compartment. I tried to think of a logical answer. A pharmacy mix-up? A rogue pill that rolled under the counter? But nobody comes into my house. Just me and Matt. He visits every few weeks. He always uses the bathroom. He checks the thermostat in the hall. He says I keep the house too cold. I used to think that was sweet. I called my pharmacist. The head pharmacist was off, but a young tech listened. I described the pill. White, round, scored down the middle. He put me on hold. When he came back, his voice was careful. "Sir, that sounds like a diuretic. A water pill. If you take that with your blood pressure meds, it can crash your pressure. Dizziness. Confusion." He paused. "In older folks, it looks a lot like dementia. Or a heart condition coming on." I sat down on the edge of the tub. Walt found me there. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just asked what I wanted to do. What do you do when the person saving you might be the one hurting you? I wanted an excuse. I wanted a reason that wasn't the dark shape forming in my head. But then I thought about the calls. The order. The third question. Is anyone there? And the way he said, "Good," when I said no. I thought about all the Sundays I told him I was alone. And last Sunday, I lied. Because I lied, nothing happened. Walt slept in the spare room again that night. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table and traced the timeline backwards. About 2 years ago, right when the call started, Matt lost his job. He didn't tell me. I found out through a cousin. He said he had savings. I wanted to believe him. Eleanor and I made a will 20 years ago. I never updated it after she died. The house is paid off. Asheville property is worth a fortune now. Between the house, my pension, and our savings, there's a lot more money sitting there than I ever thought about. It was just our life. But sitting in the dark at 2 a.m., it looked less like a life and more like a target. Monday morning, I called my doctor. I told her what I found. She told me to come in immediately, bring all my meds. She sent the round pill to a lab. She ran my blood. The results came back fast. My potassium was dangerously low. She said that explained the fatigue, the dizzy spells I'd been having for months. She looked at me hard. "Has anyone had access to your medication?" I drove home and sat in the driveway for 20 minutes. The next few days were a blur of nausea and dread. Matt called on Tuesday, just to check in. I answered. He asked if I was feeling okay. I said fine. He said he might come up Saturday for lunch. I said sure. When I hung up, I called Walt. Walt asked if I had called the police. I said no. How could I? This is my son. The boy who cried for 3 days when we had to put the dog down. The young man who held my hand at his mother's grave, without saying a word, because there were no words. Walt said, "That doesn't change the pill in your bathroom." I knew he was right, but I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Saturday, Matt arrived at noon. He hugged me. He looked tired, more tired than usual. We ate sandwiches. I watched his face. Was he a monster? Or was he just a broken man? After lunch, he asked to use the bathroom. "Go ahead," I said. He was in there for 10 minutes. I counted. When he came out, he looked lighter, less tense. Like he had just finished a chore. Here's the part one hate admitting. I had set up a camera. Walt helped me hide it in the hallway closet, aimed at the bathroom door. I am not a paranoid man. But Walt said my need to believe the best couldn't override the facts. After Matt left, I watched the footage. It showed him going into the bathroom. Then, after a minute, the door cracked open. He was listening to see if I was coming. Then it closed. Then he came out, looked down the hall toward the living room, went back in, and stayed for 5 more minutes. I drove to the sheriff's office the next morning. I sat across from a detective. I told him I thought my son was swapping my pills. Saying it out loud to a stranger felt like swallowing glass. The detective was quiet. He took the footage. He told me they would look into Matt's finances. The waiting was the worst part. I still answered the phone every Sunday. I still said I was alone. I still heard him say, "Good." That word felt like a stone in my chest. 11 days later, the detective called. The lab confirmed the pill was a diuretic, not prescribed to me. And the financials? Matt's savings were gone. He owed back rent on his apartment. Credit cards maxed out. And 3 months ago, he had asked an insurance agent about the cost of a life insurance policy. For a parent. I set the phone down. I looked out the window at Eleanor's azaleas. I remembered how she used to say that Matt worried too much, that he carried the world on his shoulders, that he needed to control things because he was afraid of being caught off guard. She said it with love. I wondered if she would have seen this coming. I think maybe she did. Is it still love when the worry turns into a cage? 2 days later, they brought Matt in for questioning. I wasn't there. I stayed home. What I learned later from the court psychologist broke my heart in a different way. Matt wasn't trying to kill me fast. He was trying to make me look sick, forgetful, dizzy, so that a judge would give him power of attorney. He wanted to protect the assets from imaginary threats. Neighbors, friends, a woman he thought I was dating. I wasn't. He had a diagnosis. Paranoid anxiety disorder with obsessive features. The job loss triggered it. The Sunday calls started as genuine worry, but the sickness twisted it into a monitoring system. He didn't think he was hurting me. In his head, he was saving me. I read that report 3 times. The first time I hated him. The second time, I hated myself for not seeing it. The third time, I just felt sad. They didn't send him to prison. They sent him to a treatment facility. He's on medication now. He gets therapy. I talk to him on the phone once a week. The calls are short, careful. The easy rhythm is gone. I don't know if it will ever come back. Sometimes love and harm wear each other's clothes for a very long time. Walt stays over more often now. He helped me throw away the old pill organizer. He sits at my kitchen table and drinks my coffee. That is the thing about old friends. They don't need a reason to show up. They just do. My doctor fixed my meds. The dizziness is gone. The azaleas are blooming this spring. I think about the lie. That Sunday morning when I told Matt I was alone when I wasn't. I didn't plan it. I didn't know what was happening. But some part of me, some survival instinct, heard the pattern and decided to break it, just for a second. If I had said, "Yes, Walt is here," would he have waited? Or would he have escalated? I don't know. That lie saved my life not because I was smart, but because I finally listened to the silence between his words. The truest thing you can do is pay attention to the moment you decide to tell a different story. I keep the thermostat at whatever temperature I want now. On Sunday mornings I pour my coffee. I take my real medication. And I sit with the quiet. Sometimes the quiet is lonely. But sometimes the quiet is just honest. If this story made you think about the hidden dynamics in your own family, and remember, listening to your gut is not paranoia. It's preservation.